Hey buddies, Miss Huggy here, coming out with another Borderlands 3 video. Today I wanted to reevaluate the new raid boss's loot table. Since it came out 3 weeks ago, I wanted to see if the loot that it drops is really worth your time on farming, and is it really worthy on raid boss status dedicated loot table. Because I feel like some of these aren't as good as it should have been. Like for example, the grenade, everyone knows is pretty bad, but let's get into it a little bit more. Before we continue, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. We just hit 800 subscribers and I'm looking to hit 900 next. Thank you very much for everyone who subscribed, and let's get into it. So the first weapon that we're going into, as I said before, would be the grenade, the Dead Ringer. The Dead Ringer is kind of a god-awful weapon. I don't see any redeeming qualities with it. I can't find a way to allow it to deal a ton of damage. It's just a little mine that if you roll into an enemy, it does a little bit of damage. 1 million right there. We got 786k, and you could shoot it to let it blow up a little bit quicker, but it's not really good besides that. There's a lot of other grenades you can use in the game that could deal a lot more damage than the Dead Ringer could. It kind of feels like it's a troll drop rate for the players that are farming the boss. Like it was put in as a meme, like it's a dead drop or something, hence the name Dead Ringer. But it still feels really bad fighting the boss for about 10 minutes or for average 5 minutes, and getting this as your only drop besides a Company Man, which is 100% drop rate. It just makes you think, what were they thinking putting a piece of loot with this type of quality in a raid boss dedicated loot table? If you found a use for this grenade, tell me, because I personally can't figure it out. And then next, let's go into one of the weapons, this one being the Ionic Disruptor. This, along with the Atlas Replay, is one of the two only weapons that the raid boss drops. And when you first get the gun, it seems really fun being able to shoot amp shots only, and it seems really cool, but in practice it doesn't seem to actually be dealing that much damage. It can shoot through shields. It has a melee shock, as I'll show you in a few seconds here, and it does decent damage on crit. You could kill the enemies like that. See, I just did 6 million damage with one shot because I was able to get that one thing to proc that deals massive crit damage explosion when you hit a crit. So it's great. It seems to be really good for mobbing, but I did decide to run a few DPS checks with Captain Tron. It took me, on my best attempt, 24 seconds to kill Captain Tron with a fadeaway Flak build with max stacks with the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge. I was able to enable max stacks by using a cloning Hunter Seeker. But to create this best attempt, I did have to jump through a couple of hoops. Like I had to activate Pearl stacks by using a Hunter Seeker, throwing a bunch of grenades out because of that. I had to melee the boss to allow it to deal 2 times the amount of damage, since it applies a shock debuff that also allows Ionic Disruptor to deal 2 times damage. Due to that, it made it a bit difficult to get a fast attempt with that weapon. If you were to put enough quit multipliers on this weapon, it could potentially be a decent bosser, but is outclassed by a lot of other weapons still in the meta. Although some weapons aren't destined to be a bosser, as I said before, it's actually a pretty decent mobber, but you could use other weapons that are more reliable and allow you to shoot faster. This weapon isn't as forgiving as other Jacob's weapons, since it does shoot pretty slow. It feels like you have to give the weapon a lot of leeway to allow it to deal tons and tons of damage, but besides that, Zane and Flak could probably benefit the most from this weapon, but I don't really see it become a weapon of choice for most players here, or anytime soon with other characters. The next and only other weapon the raid boss drops is the Atlas Replay, kind of a play on words with Action Replay from the old game consoles. I believe it was NES. I have nothing but good things to say about this weapon. It's easy to use. The trackers go through walls, which is insane. It has great fire rate. You're able to deal tons and tons of damage really easily with this weapon, and I don't even have like a great anointment on it. Against Captain Tron, I was able to defeat the boss in about 18 seconds with using the same exact build, fadeaway Flak, and the same weapons, Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge, using Hunter Seeker as well to allow me to build Pearl stacks from the very start. This weapon seems really fun to play with. It could definitely deal a lot more damage if you were to play Moze, because it does kind of get rid of its ammo really quickly, even when using Flak's ability to gain ammo as you deal critical shots. So that's kind of a downside. It does get rid of its ammo pretty quickly, but it does have a decent reload speed, so besides that, it's pretty great. I could see this being in a couple of builds, especially with Moze, but it is an Atlas weapon, which is kind of holds it back. from being any better. Most Atlas weapons are kind of bad in the game. I don't think there's a single weapon on the tier list meta that is an Atlas weapon at all, but maybe this weapon will be a candidate for that if we get some good builds with it. I could definitely think of a couple right off the bat. Interesting glitch that this weapon has is when you're using Postmortem, you're unable to actually shoot death that comes out when using the Atlas replay, and even if you switch to other weapons, you can't shoot either. Something about the tracking bullets may cause this, I'm not sure. I don't use any Atlas weapons to test this out with besides the Atlas replay, so it's just a funny glitch I saw. I thought you guys would be interested. And then finally we go to the Company Man. The Company Man is actually a pretty decent artifact. It's not quite the best, despite a lot of people saying it is. For those who don't know, the Company Man is basically a manufacturer alliance. Get a manufacturer of any kind. I believe I have every single one here except for... No, I think I actually have all of them. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But yeah, I think I have all of them. There's 9 in total. An artifact is good for a straight damage boost. If you've seen my most recent video, click up here on why you probably shouldn't farm the Company Man. I showed that in a lot of DPS checks, the Pearl Ineffable Knowledge does deal more damage on crit and regular body shot damage on average against most Company Mans. The only Company Man that's able to deal more damage than the Pearl is if you have percentage stack on area of effect damage, because that's a multiplicable multiplier. But let's not get too crazy into the math. I'm actually going to be making a video soon talking about how much time you would have to take to get a godroll Company Man to be able to deal tons and tons of damage, even outperform the Pearl Ineffable Knowledge, and just how long that would take you. And I'm going to be creating that video very soon, so click the link up there. The artifact itself is decent. There is a ton of other artifacts that you can get with secondary stats that you can get on the Company Man as well that are better, like the Elemental Projector, or if you're playing Zane, maybe Victory Rush would be better for you. I'm not 100% certain on that. But I feel like the Company Man is a decent artifact. It does its job well, being an alliance manufacturer booster, but it always will be shined as second best in most cases compared to other artifacts. It's not as good as it could have been. And if you look at all the loot that has dropped from the raid boss, the Dead Ringer, the Company Man, the Atlas replay, and the Ionic Disruptor, I personally think that the loot is a bit disappointing from a raid boss, because when you take into comparison other weapons and gear and loot that dropped from DLC 6, like right here I have the Free Radical. Free Radical is an amazing weapon. It's super easy to use, does tons and tons of damage. I feel like so many of these are situational. Like the Atlas replay is great, it's going to deal tons and tons of damage, be great on consecutive hits builds, blah blah blah, but its Atlas weapon usually inherently is not that great. Unfortunate. It is probably the best Atlas weapon, as I said before, but I feel like for raid boss quality loot, it's not as good as it should have been. And I do believe the Atlas replay is the best piece of loot that drops from the boss. The Ionic Disruptor is pretty clunky to use, I feel. It does decent damage. You could definitely do amazing things with Zane Ricochet and Fade Away Flak if you get a bunch of critical bonuses, but it doesn't deal enough damage to warrant a raid boss loot. Dead Ringer, I said before, just a dead weapon. Once you get it to drop, it's like, okay, well, this is absolutely crap. It's just kind of a vanity type of thing. It's like great for those of you who want to collect legendaries, but it doesn't do anything besides look cool, I guess, and be unique from other grenades. And the Company Man is just second best artifact for most builds, unless you're looking for a ton of magazine size or trying to get a ton of fire rate. I just feel like the loot in general that drops from the raid boss isn't as good as it should have been. Like, you have other weapons like the Infernal Wish, the Free Radical, Super Soldier, all these other crazy piece of gear that is not part of the loot table for the raid boss, and it's just really crappy to think that you're going to spend 5 minutes of your time to get a piece of loot that isn't that great, and arguably against hardest boss in the game to try to farm these pieces of loot. The raid boss itself is a great fight, but I feel like these weapons need to be buffed to warrant a reason to farm the boss, because there's no reason to really farm the boss because these pieces of loot aren't that amazing unless you're trying to get the Company Man magazine size for Vladof Moze. It's just, I don't know, it's a bit disappointing. Alright buddies, that's all I have for today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I hope y'all have a great day. Bye bye. And the last shall be first to immerse in a pass out heat, facing him out with a moxie melt till he woke up drowning in tchotchke hell. More in a cave with a torch on a wall than a window arrangement of porcelain dolls.